There we go. All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome again to another fun virtual tasting class that we're doing tonight. This time we are with New Norfolk Distillery and Tarrant from New Norfolk, and he's going to take us through the distillery, their story, and obviously we've got some great silver spirits, rums, and a couple of tasty liqueurs to finish with as well. It's going to be an absolutely delicious tasting. I can tell you that from a first-hand experience, and looking very forward to getting into these rums and things. So I'm not going to waste any more of your time. I'm going to hand over to Tarrant, and he can introduce himself and a bit about the distillery. Thanks, Tarrant.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, Tarrant Dirksen here from New Norfolk Distillery. Here we go. Hear me? Yep, cool. Yep, Tarrant Dirksen.
That was on me. I went to mute myself and hit you instead. Apologies.
That's okay. Again. So Tarrant Dirksen here from New Norfolk Distillery. I'm the director and founder. We are down here in Tasmania, just north of Hobart, about half an hour northwest of Hobart along the Derwent River. So it's pretty cold here at the moment, but all the doors are closed and the wind is staying out. So we're fine. But down here, we're in the old Willow Court Asylum complex. So we built our distillery in an old asylum. It was built before Port Arthur. There's an old barracks here as well, but the building we're currently in is called the Industrial Therapy Building. And this building used to have patients come in and make various pencil boxes and pieces of furniture and the like for around the site for the asylum. Following that, it was a kitchen at one stage, and then following that, it was a heritage joinery workshop, and now it's my favorite permutation, which is a rum distillery. So here we make a few styles of rum. One of the ones that we're trying is the Misty Valley Silver Spirit, and feel free to try that now. And while you're trying that, I'm going to walk around and show you our distillery. So I'm going to flip this around. So this is our distillery. So I was just sitting at the bar there before. So going into the production area, I've got some barrels on the left, and on the right over there is one of our stills. That's our 350 litre copper spirit still. That's what we use for our spirit distillation for our second run, because we do 2 distillations. And what we have over here is our wash still. So this is a 1200 litre wash still. We fill it up to about 1,000 litres. So the way we make rum, and the way you make rum in Australia or anywhere in the world, is to use sugar or sugarcane products. So here's my Misty Valley Silver Spirit. So to make rum has to be made from sugar or sugarcane spirit. So or sugarcane. So we can use molasses, white sugar, brown sugar, sugarcane honey, sugarcane wine, high test molasses, meal virgin, panela, jaggery. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can use, but it has to be made from sugarcane. So sugarcane's been used for food and for like, as a sort of to be eaten and as a food, and distilled for over 100 years. But it's been around since about 500 BC, when it was identified when King Darius went into Persia and said there was a way to get honey without bees, basically. So when they found out that it could be fermented and distilled, that's when we started to get rum production and sugar production. So that was made a lot in the Caribbean islands back in the day, and that's where rum first started being produced. And when the first fleet came over to Australia in 1788, they also brought along with them 1,600 litres of rum as part of their ration, even though they were told not to, because they were told by Admiral Howe at the time to say they were meant to take all rations except wine and spirits. But since that was interpreted by the captain at the time, Arthur Phillip, he interpreted it saying when they said except, it meant that they could take more than none. So he actually made sure they brought even more rations of rum. So what a guy. But what we're trying now is the Misty Valley Silver Spirit. So what we've got there is we've got some floral and citrus notes with a bit of green banana and banana leaf. and everyone tastes rum and spirits differently. So you can always do the first taste by having a sip, letting your mouth get used to the high alcohol content, and then having another sip to actually take in the flavors as your mouth gets used to the degree of alcohol that your mouth is taking on. This is a very clean spirit. It's got those very clean notes, and it's been double distilled through the still. So the way we make rum down here is we get molasses and we get sugar. We put it into one of these stainless steel fermenters. We mix it up. And what's different between making rum and making whiskey is we don't have to make beer first. So we don't have to mash, we don't have to lauter, we don't have to do any of that beer making stuff to release the sugars from the grain, because the sugar is already in its form that we want to actually ferment and then distill. So we put it in there, 1,000 litres of wash in the end. So we're saying about 100 litres of molasses. We also use white sugar in there as well to boost up the alcohol. And then we put in our proprietary yeast. And then that's what then converts these sugars into alcohol, but also creates CO2. So we have airlocks on the side, which are basically a bucket with a hose in it, which is producing air. And it's also keeping a nice seal on top of the alcohol and the wash inside, keeping it clean and safe. So what was that question, sorry?
So the question that's come in is from Rob is, do you use the silver spirit mostly as a cocktail mixer?
A lot of people, so the silver spirit is our equivalent of a white rum. We can't call it rum unless it's been aged 2 years in Australia, so we call it silver spirit. So other names for this would be Blanco, Eau de Vie, New Make, sugarcane spirit. There's so many different names you can call it, but since it has been aged 2 years, we call it a silver spirit, but you would use it similarly to use the way you use other white rums. So we use ours as a mixer, even though we do like ours as it is. So we make mojitos, daiquiris, any of those sort of tropical cocktails that we enjoy. Yeah.
So Tarrant, you said that it's 2 years in Australia to be classified as a rum. Is that different to other places in the world?
Yes. So there's everywhere else in the world basically has no age requirement for rum. It's just Australia and a few other countries as well. But Australia, we have to be at least 2 years, and I think Venezuela and Cuba are a couple of the other ones as well. So yeah, so a couple of other places, but Australia is one of them, and that's as a result of us having used rum as currency when we had the rum corps back in the day. And as a result of that, the ATO wanted to make sure that anyone who distilled rum or made rum, that it was registered, and that if it was actually going to be used as currency, it was on a register, so that if they did trade it, it was actually worth the value they said it was, and it actually aged for at least 2 years as they said it would be. So
that's an interesting reason for that to be.
Yeah, so we're the only guys that do that. But that was one variation of the Misty Valley Silver Spirit we tried anyway. And now we're going to go to the Drone Riot next, which is this one here. So be careful with this one. This one is a 60% spirit. So, but this one is made a bit differently. So this one's got, we call it a wild ferment. And what I have behind me is one of the wild ferments we've got going on at the moment. If I can get that to work. So as you can see here, this is a wild ferment. So what we've got on here is we've got a lot of carboxylic acid being created, because we've, instead of just putting the sugar cane, the sugar and the molasses in there and adding the yeast, we've left the top open, as you see, as opposed to the stainless steel fermenter over there. And we've actually put in some of our dunder, and we've actually put in a bit of our muck as well, which adds those unique bacteria and that infection, which is what we're after. So when people make beers or they make other spirits or whiskies, they probably don't want their wash or their wort to be infected. We've gone the exact opposite way here. We want that infection in here. So what that creates is unique esters and flavors, which you'll actually get to try now in the Drone Riot.
While people are having a try of the Drone Riot, Rob followed up and said that he, regarding the Misty Valley, that it's a lot nicer than Bacardi.
Oh, thank you. I do appreciate that.
Cool. And we had another question come in from, I'm assuming, Craig. Have you named the still yet?
No. So our smallest still over there, we've got a bit of a theme with how we like to do things here. So our smallest still, because I'm a bit of a nerd, is called Leela from Futurama. You can probably take a guess why if you know Futurama, the single eye in the middle there. But we've had been asking people on Facebook, online, what to name our newest still, and we haven't actually come to a decision yet. We've had a few good ones, like Minion's not bad. We've had a few options like Ripley, Storm from X-Men, Starbuck from Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
And the idea behind the naming of it is that this still is meant to be the other woman that the male distiller generally historically was spending all his time with instead of his wife. So it was because of the shapely forms of the still, but we're maintaining that tradition with our own sort of twist on it, being a sci-fi sort of female hero pilot type thing. So that's what we're going for.
Excellent. Just while we're talking about that, David's got a question that is your base still primarily the same for the Drone Riot with molasses and added sugar, etc.?
Yeah. So it's the same. You can say mash bill, even though we're not mashing and lautering and stuff. It's the same basic recipe of what we're using for the sugars in there. So the same amount of molasses, the same amount of white sugar, except we're adding a bit of, like I said, a bit of muck and a bit of dunder. Like the muck is what's left over. In Jamaica, they've got like muck pits where there's basically festering dunder, which is the leftover distilled wash outside, gaining as much bacteria as possible. So we do a little bit of that here. And the dunder is the freshly distilled wash straight from the still. So being in Tasmania where it's quite cold, I used to add dunder to our clean ferments. And the clean ferment would have a bit of dunder in there, not so much for flavor originally, but it was more for heat, because we need to get the yeast to the right temperature. And instead of having to heat up a lot of water, which I didn't have access to when I first started, we actually would use a lot of that dunder, and that back set is another term that we use to actually add that heat. So you're coming off the still at about 80 degrees and adding it to about water that's at about 10 degrees actually brought us to the right temperature point at about 25, 30 degrees, where we wanted our yeast to start turning those sugars into alcohol. So
okay, cool.
What do we think? So what do we think of that one? Bit funkier, 60%, bit stronger? Definitely
funkier. I get really strong sort of, I don't know what the difference makes the smell, but I get like a mashed banana-y sort of, almost overripe banana-y sort of thing, and definitely more of a characteristic bite to it.
Yeah.
We've made before, I'll tell everybody, we've made mojitos with the Drone Riot, and it lifts it. It just really lifts it. They're great. So I would, anyone who ends up with a bottle of the Drone Riot, do not be afraid to get it into your favorite cocktails and really elevate it. Is anyone else getting any particular notes or anything you think? Also, Rob's asking what difference would 2 years aging make to the white spirits if not using oak?
So barrel aging only happens in the barrel, basically. So if we left the spirit in a sealed container, there wouldn't be much difference. So the only change we would find would be in barrels. So what we're getting onto next after this one is the Dormant Star, which is what is our silver spirit, which we tried first, aged for 2.5 years in ex-bourbon barrels. So that'll actually give you a good indication of what the changes would be like. Otherwise, we do have some of the Drone Riot in barrel at the moment. We just haven't reached that 2-year mark. So we're just waiting to see what that's like. So does that answer your question, Rob?
Thumbs up from Rob. Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Okay, well, let's move on to the Dormant Star then. And if there's any questions, shoot them through. I'm happy to answer them. So
you're very good at multitasking there, Tarrant.
Yeah, I know. I'm walking around
and answering questions, pouring stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Being quite coordinated here. So what we have next is the Dormant Star, which is our single rum. So in rum categorizations, we have rums, single rums, silver spirits, or sugarcane spirits, and we also have pure single rums as well. So pure single rum is a rum that's basically come out of barrel, maybe been hydrated, and then nothing else is added. So this is a single rum because we've put a little bit of dosage in there, which is a little bit of sugar, and that sugar we felt opened it up a bit. It's a 47.5%. Flavors I get from this, or notes I get from this, are more creme brulee, more white pepper, a bit of tobacco leaf, and a bit of old spice. So this is more your traditional sipping rum, one you can drink neat or on the rocks. Anton and I have discussed this before. You can either drink rum a couple of different ways. If it's hot, drink it on the rocks. If it's cold, on or off the rocks, it's up to you. We're not fussy how you drink rum. Rum's fun. Rum's enjoyable. Drink it any way you want. You don't like, we can mix it into straight from the bottles. One way to do it. You can mix it into cocktails. You know, any way you want. You can do a shoey if you really feel obliged. That's up to you. But yeah, each to their own. But just enjoy it. Have fun.
Straight from the bottle. I'm with Rob on that. This is a great sipping whiskey. It's a great drinking whiskey, regardless of the amount taken with each spill. But
we'll forgive Anton for whiskey then. But
you've done a fair bit of traveling and research in your rum journey.
Yep.
And what tell the people about that, because it's not just something that you've done down there out of Hobart.
Yeah. So when I'll answer that in a sec. So when I got started, I traveled to the US and went to a place called Moonshine University, which is it's not a university. It's pretty much a place that does short courses, but I think they call a lot of things university in the US. So I went there and I did a rum making course in Kentucky, in Louisville. That was a week-long course, but during that time, I also traveled down to Louisiana, to New Orleans as well, to visit a bunch of rum distilleries and talk to a bunch of distillers there. And I also traveled down to South America, to Nicaragua, where I also went to Panama as well, where I went to rum distilleries in Nicaragua and Panama too. I also went to Southeast Asia and went to a few of the different distilleries that they had in those locations, just to get a better idea. But as you all may know, there's a lot of distilleries in Australia too. So getting a good idea of what was in our own backyard was really helpful. For me, the reason we started the rum distillery here, I spoke about the history of the building, but not the history of New Norfolk Distillery so much, is we started it because I came down to visit my brothers here in Tasmania. I'm not from Tasmania originally. I grew up in Melbourne and lived in between Sydney and Canberra, and then moved to Tasmania to start the distillery, because I came down one time to visit both my brothers. We're having a couple of, we'll call it cleansing ales, down at a Salamanca tavern. And then we started getting onto the local whiskies and the local gins, which were phenomenal. And then me, being a rum lover, decided to go, hey, let's try some different rums. I gave my brothers some of the Diplomatico Exclusiva Reserva, which was one of my favorites at the time. And then we started getting into some of the Flor de Cañas and some of the other rums. And then the question came up, why is there no one doing Tasmanian rum? And that's when I said, well, that's the one I'm doing. That's my journey. And that's when I decided to go overseas and do these courses and start the rum distillery down here. So it's a bit of history about it. Now I've got this distillery, and obviously working with interstate partners and building up the brand and sharing the good word that is rum, basically.
That most excellent. While you've been talking, there's a couple of questions that have just come in regarding barrel. What type of barrels are you using, and what's the aging process in general for the Dormant Star?
Yep. So for the barrels in general, we primarily used ex-bourbon barrels. So we wanted to stick with the traditional Caribbean style of aging. With the US being so close to the Caribbean, bourbon barrels can only be used once as one of their rules. So to make bourbon, they have to use, there's a whole bunch of rules, 51% corn, aged, and there's all different proof levels throughout their process. But one of them is they have to use virgin oak. So barrels can be used 3 or 4 or 5 times, basically. So we found that the Caribbean rum distillers were all using these ex-bourbon barrels because they could be used 3 or 4 times, and there wasn't actually a flavor requirement for why the Americans were making bourbon with barrels just using the barrels once. It was actually because the Coopers unions in the US were very strong, and they wanted to ensure that they were keeping jobs in the workforce. So it was a work requirement to use the barrel once, but it actually has turned out for stronger provenance and origin of the bourbon brand. So as a result of that, the world won because bourbon became very popular, which meant there was a lot of ex-bourbon barrels around. And with the Caribbean being so close, rum distilleries just across the water started to use those barrels too. For us to use them, we decided to use them as well because we wanted to go down the traditional rum path before getting a bit creative. And that's what the stage we're at now. That's what the Drone Riot you tried before was. That's us playing with a bit more of our creativity and creating some unique rums and flavors all in the one distillery.
Yeah, no, I mean, you've got a lot of room, excuse me, a lot of room to experiment with different barrels and stuff. I mean, just look at the sisters whiskey industry in Tasmania and all the different, wine casks and everything else that are very common usage. I mean, you're almost limitless with the type of experimentation that you can then do using all your different, quite substantially different styles of rum as well. Awesome.
So other barrels we use as well is we also use Pedro Jimenez, Creme Canastas, Oloroso. We use a lot of, as you can see, some red wine, some table red wine barrels behind us. For the Dormant Star specifically, that is ex-bourbon barrels or Jack Daniels in there as well. So we've got a combination of Jack Daniels, Woodford Reserve, and Maker's Mark barrels making the Dormant Star. And we've also got a tequila barrel, and for toasting and charring, our preferred toasting and charring levels is probably pretty standard, but it's medium toast, heavy char is what we use. That allows a lot of extraction of flavor from the wood. So we're talking about vanillins and tannins that come out primarily of bourbon barrels, but out of the wine casks, a bit more of the sugars are coming through there too. So
awesome.
Excellent. So that's that. I'll walk you guys back to the bar. And if there's any questions, you see anything. So this is our bottling table. Nothing too special, but that's where all the bottles are filled and labeled. And it is quite a big space as well. So we do have a brewery on the right. And here are some more of our barrels as well. So talking about barrels again, which is one of my favorite subjects, we've got, these are 20-litre barrels. And the way barrels are meant to work is they're meant to be like a slow heartbeat. As the temperature changes from day to night, the wood is meant to, like the barrel's meant to compress and expand and force the liquid or the spirit in and out of the pores. So what we find is that what you're meant to find, and what younger distilleries do, is they buy the smaller barrels expecting an aged spirit in a shorter term, but which is possible, like a better quality spirit after the 2-year mark. but it isn't always necessarily true, because you might just end up with an oaky spirit or an oaky rum, because it does impart a lot of oaky flavour, but doesn't get some of those nice rounding tannins. So we've moved up to working primarily with the hundreds and 125 litre barrels, and also up to the 225 litre barrels you guys saw before. So there's different barrel strengths as well. We use the same one the whiskey distillers down here use, which is putting spirit in at 63.4%, and then we test it as we feel it's getting to maturity. So, any other questions at the moment?
No. Not really. So I would just say to everybody, if you've got some left in the glass of some of these, it's not a bad thing to leave a little and then come back at the end to compare back to the earlier things after you've gone through, especially with what we've got coming towards the end of this. Give you different, your mouth's had all different flavors, get something different from them. But apart from that, I think we're pretty good to probably move on to the Near Horizon.
Excellent. So Near Horizon is our Caribbean style spiced rum. So traditional Caribbean style spiced rums have orange, vanilla, and cinnamon. We've got them in there. We've also got some Australian with a focus on Tasmanian botanicals and spices. So those Tasmanian botanicals and spices, they're my secret recipe. So don't ask me what they are. You can probably have a guess, depending on how good your palate is identifying different botanicals and the like. But I saw today that there was a KFC inspired rum released for National Rum Day. So
KFC rum.
Yeah. So this one's at 40%. It's a bit sweeter. There's a bit more dosage in there, but this one's great to sip on. This is what I call our gateway rum. If you're not a rum drinker, this is a great way to get someone into trying rums and enjoying rums. It's got a little bit more of that mouthfeel, that viscosity in there, and is quite delightful to drink, whether on or off the rocks. This is also a great one to make a dark and stormy out of if you want to make a cocktail in that sense. But you can also just add any soda, any type of soft drink, and a bit of lime. You've made a great cocktail with this one. So the history of spiced rums, the idea behind making a spiced rum originally was to basically hide imperfections in the spirit. Maybe lemon myrtle, I'm not going to say. Was to hide imperfections in the spirit. But my concept with this rum was, what if we used a good quality rum and actually aim to make a good quality spiced rum? So that's what I've made here. I think it tastes great as it is, but as I said, have it on the rocks, or you could even add a bit of bitters and a little bit more sugar and then stir it down to basically make an old fashioned, or you can also add it with a bit of pineapple juice and a bit of coconut cream, shake that up over a bit of ice, and then that would make a great pina colada. We're all about drinking the fancy tropical drinks over here. So.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. And with that lighter style, I think of it as compared to like some of the really heavier Caribbean darker spiced rums. I'll get that out eventually. It is nicer in a lighter, fruitier thing. We were making I guess you'd call them Cuba Libres, and I guess a sort of dark and stormy thing, but with dry, and we actually did have bitters there as well. It mixes really well. I love it just as it is.
It's great as it is. Like I said, if as I mentioned before, it's great to have just on the rocks if it's hot. And yeah, if you want to make a rum and coke as well, we're not so offended by those words as some people think you might be. This is probably the one to have it with. So but don't add too much Coke. Just add enough to add a bit of flavour to basically spritz it up, and then put a bit of lime in there as well, and happy days. And then you've made a fancy cocktail called the Cuba Libre, as Anton said before. So.
It's the I think that's like the gateway cocktail for rum as well.
Yeah, exactly. Good starter there as well. So,
we've got some fans of this from the chat. Lovely spiced rum, the duck's nuts, all sorts of stuff. So all very good. So, yeah, it's great, and it's again comparing all four that we've had so far, from the silver spirits at the start, the difference between the Misty Belly and then that funkiness from the wild ferment into the Drone Riot, and then compare that with the single rum to the spiced rum. And they're four very different drinks with essentially the same base.
Yeah, exactly. So if you follow the line, if you skip the Drone Riot in the middle, the silver spirit becomes in the barrel after 2.5 years the Dormant Star, and that's the Dormant Star is what we select our best barrels to become. And then for the ones that are still really good, but we want to make spiced rum, we use some of those barrels to also then spice as well. So they're also ex-bourbon barrels in there as well. So you can sort of see that trend. What the difference between the Misty Valley Silver Spirit and the Drone Riot are is there's a term called mark. If you may have heard the term maker's mark for the bourbon. So what they're talking about there is basically the distiller's recipe, the maker's mark, the distiller's recipe. And what that mark is, it could be spelled M-A-R-K or M-A-R-Q-U-E. And that's the recipe all the way from fermenting, what recipe you put in for your mash bill, essentially. So your sugar, molasses, your yeast, all the way through to fermenting and how you distill, and then how you hydrate it. So that's straight off, that's what the mark is. That's one recipe. So what you've tried is basically two of our marks at the start, and you've seen one of those marks or one of those recipes all the way through from coming off the still, going through the barrel, and then actually being spiced as well. So it's a bit of a unique combination, which you might not see from many distilleries, because I guess a lot of the whiskey distilleries that are out there aren't necessarily releasing their unaged spirit. But that's up to them, and that's their prerogative in that sense.
For people who are in Tasmania or visiting Tasmania, do you guys have site visits and distillery tours or anything like that?
Yeah, so I'm actually sitting in our tasting bar where you can come and visit us to do a tour. You've seen a bit of the distillery already, but don't let that put you off, and try some of the other things we have available here as well. So we're always making unique spirits, but obviously coming to what we call the home of rum in Tasmania, because we are, as someone mentioned before, there have been other distillers that have made rum down here, but we're Tasmania's only rum dedicated distillery. We're just behind where the agrarian kitchen is, Dave. So, sorry, I see some of the questions and come up, but not all of them. We're in that same place. We're in New Norfolk. We're half an hour away from Hobart. So if you're going around visiting a few distilleries, try and visit us first, and we'll obviously give you a few other places where you can go as well. And there's a good couple of places to have lunch and to eat in the area too. And we can show you.
On that, perhaps Dave's just asked, you guys by the agrarian kitchen?
Yeah. So they're in the same asylum complex as us as well. So whether we're both crazy or not, that's a different story. But it's a good place to be to make spirits. Another unique thing we're doing as well is this Saturday night, we're holding our first Awaken Your Spirits event, which is actually an event we're working with a local paranormal investigations group who are going to be looking for ghosts in our distillery. So people come and try some rum. We make the joke, come to see one spirit, maybe leave with another. But we'll see how people go and how much people enjoy that, because this is the first one we're running. So yeah.
That's a unique sort of take on it. That'd be a bit of fun.
Yeah, it's a bit different, but we're doing rum in what is largely whiskey and gin territory, so we're doing things a bit differently. I guess the other thing I should let you guys know as well is, as I mentioned before, I'm a bit of a nerd. We are still figuring out the name of our still. I saw someone said Gomorrah as well. That's a pretty good one too. And where, as you've seen with maybe some of the names of our products, that's a bit of my nerdiness coming out as well. So that's my creativity coming through. So the Near Horizon spiced rum is named after the Near Horizon, which is a scientific term for how they measure the size of a black hole. Dormant Star is the name of that. Is basically we were waiting for several years for that rum to finally awaken. So it was our Dormant Star coming awake, and with the Drone Riot, that's from an old video game I used to play when I was a kid called Alpha Centauri, and then you had like little cities and the drones would eventually ride and then you'd lose, but it's a bit of fun. And the reason I named that is because the yeast and the bacteria are basically having a riot in the wash and in the mash. So
Sure.
But speaking of that, let's move on to the next one. The next one is the Voorwaarde Dutch cookie liqueur.
Voorwaarde Dutch cookie liqueur.
So this here is the Voorwaarde Dutch cookie liqueur. Before you have a taste of it, if you haven't tried it already, have a smell, and it should smell to you like the Speculaas biscuits or the Dutch biscuits. Basically, if you don't know what they are, it's like gingerbread without the ginger in it.
It's a bread.
So we use cassia, nutmeg, star anise, clove, all those sort of festive holiday spices as the spices that go into this one. And we've also got a base of our silver spirit, which is our Misty Valley, and that's the base of pretty much everything except for what the Drone Riot is, which is its own mark, as I mentioned before.
Dave's saying you're spot on for the biscuits on the nose.
Yeah, oh, I absolutely love this. So this one's great. I made this for my dad for Christmas last year. It's called Voorwaarde, which means for father or for dad. For dad in Dutch. And as I mentioned before, I'm a bit of a nerd. So there is the underlying tone of Star Wars there, if you've picked that one up. Not sure if you have. And on May 4th every year, my dad dresses up as Darth Vader now. So it wasn't Christmas last year, it was Christmas the year before, sorry. So this year just passed, me and my dad went out and did deliveries. I dressed up as Luke Skywalker in his X-Wing fighter pilot costume, and he went out as Darth Vader. So
that would have been an interesting receiving.
Just a bit of fun, really. Just a bit of fun. So,
oh dear.
The way to drink this
almost
it's go ahead, Anton. Sorry.
No, sorry, I interrupted you then.
Oh yeah. So the way to drink this one, in my opinion, is to have it with a bit of apple juice. We use a cloudy apple juice. Obviously, we're from the Apple Isle, so we've got access to a lot of that. But you can have that apple juice either hot or cold. Having a hot, like heating up a bit of apple juice either in a pan or however you heat it up, in an urn or whatever you want to do if you want to make a larger batch. And then adding a bit of this is a great sort of wintry mulled style drink. When I mentioned the word mulled as well, if you want to mull something, just add this to your wine, to your cider, to whatever you're making. You don't need to add any of the spices because we've done a lot of the work for you. So
I was actually, what I was going to say before you said that was it reminds me in a flavour way, not in the viscosity, but of a mulled cider that Cooper's did that we had last winter, and it's different to like a mulled wine because it doesn't have that sort of winey. But yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, this is great. It's got a great great mouthfeel to it. With our liqueurs, we try not to put too much sugar in there to reduce the flavour, but it is still a liqueur. Our liqueurs are generally around the 25 to 30% alcohol as well, because we love that alcohol, that flavour in there. But this one is more we feel it's more delicate, it's more nuanced as well. And we actually got a gold medal for this liqueur at the Australian Rum Awards, just missing out on a trophy at the end of last year. Which also reminds me that we actually got the trophy for the Drone Riot as best cane spirit in Australia.
Best cane spirit in Australia. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So, which we're hoping to repeat that again this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Craig said he gets some mango on the nose from this one. And Rob's saying that doesn't matter about mixing any of it. He's enjoying them just how they are. Doesn't need to take anything else. So
no, we're happy with the way. We're happy with them the way they are too.
Yeah. But that goes back to your earlier thing about drink it how you want to drink it. Enjoy how you want to enjoy it. It's we're all different people. It's all subjective.
Yeah, exactly.
The end of as long as you're enjoying it, there is no wrong answer.
Yeah, and another thing you can do, as I mentioned, hot drinks before, is you can put a bit into your hot chocolate if you like a hot chocolate, because it's already a sweet. It's got those nice spices in there as well.
That's sounding very good.
With my wife and I, we've made rum balls with pretty much every product we've got. So this one we made rum balls with having, instead of crushing up the Marie biscuits, we crushed up some of the speculaas biscuits to go in there as well, which some people might consider overkill, but if you've eaten those speculaas biscuits, you'd understand.
Absolutely.
Are there any other questions or anything at the moment? Because I'll just keep talking about random rum stuff if no one has one. Well, I will anyway. So another thing that we were talking about proof and ABV before. There was an old naval tradition, which is of finding the proof, where they used to mix the white rum or the rum with the gunpowder, and if it would only ignite if the proof was above 57%. So that was before they invented the Sykes hydrometer, which is the little glass hydrometer which you put into the spirit, and it sort of floats when it gets to the right ABV. Which is what we use for measuring our alcohol. But before then, which is quite a while ago, the sailors used to use proofing, which was by mixing that paste and then igniting it. If the paste exploded, it meant that it was like an overproof, which meant that it was a really good spirit and really high proof as well. So, and well, let's move on to the next one. So that was the Vorvada. Next, we have the Pillar of Autumn Smoky Maple Old Fashioned.
Now, we just recently had an event down here where we featured this guy, and as basically a ready-to-drink option for something a bit different. And the feedback we got was fantastic. People were just all over it, to be honest. So I know that Craig and I are both massive fans of this one.
Yep.
Craig's smiling away up there. So I'm very confident you're all going to enjoy this one.
So if there's any fans who've played the video game Halo out there, the name is named after one of the ships in Halo, nerd. And the reason we created this one is we wanted something to evoke hiking and walking through the Tasmanian wilderness during autumn, basically, as the leaves are falling and the changing colours, and the idea of getting to a campfire and having a sip of a nice crafted cocktail, which there aren't too many around, or too many that evoke that sort of feeling. We felt this was what could do that. It's got that lovely smokiness. It's got that sweetness from the maple syrup. To me, it tastes like sweet campfire roasted bacon, and they're all good things to imbibe. So,
yeah, none of those words are bad.
We've been questioned numerous times whether there's actually bacon in it. There is not. There is no meat product in that in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, having a bit of ice and some thyme in there as well is a good way to garnish it. So this one is that sort of it gives that sort of salty sweet flavor combination, which you get when you sort of have like pancakes with some bacon on it as well, which is something I also enjoy doing, you know, staying healthy. So more pill of autumn is best thing down to it. Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Just remind us, what's the ABV on that one?
This one says, it changes batch to batch, but this one says 27.2. So,
yeah, so it's generally around that mid to high 20s, yeah?
Yeah. So, we've got a couple of other liqueurs as well, which are pretty much around that same mark as well. But this has been used as either a cocktail, like just drink it as it is, pour it over a bit of ice with a garnish, or you can even use it as a liqueur yourself and mix it with other things. We've seen a couple of bartenders use it as a bit of syrup in Mai Tais, and adds a bit of density because it's more viscous. It does actually drop to the bottom of the cocktail as well. So it's sort of like a nice ending to that cocktail. So.
Sure. The elusively named iPad has asked, tell us about your new cask strength rum that they saw on your website today.
Yeah, so that's our Diablo Robotico. So down here in Tasmania, we've got what's known as a maritime temperate. So what we find is that it's great for barrel aging spirits. So that's why we do produce a lot of great whiskies and a lot of great rums now. But we're also got a great, that also adds great humidity, which means that the transformation in the barrel is really something else. The other thing we've got that's great down here is our water. Our water's really quite pristine and quite beautiful too. So those two, that's a bit of a winning combination. And what we find where we are specifically is that we lose water in the barrel as opposed to alcohol due to the angel share, which is the degree of evaporation that occurs in the barrel. And so we're going into the barrel at 63.4%. And what we found when we were looking for our next cask to make Dormant Star with was that one of the casks was just exceptional. So it was we feel we knocked it out of the park for that one. And that cask strength was actually 66.6%. No joke, it actually came out that way. And we were doing the event Dark Mofo about a month and a half after we tested that cask, and we basically said, stop everything else we're doing. We need to release this for Dark Mofo because it's Providence that we've actually found a cask that's 66.6% that tastes this great, and we've got a reason to release it, and Dark Mofo is coming up, which has that sort of, I guess, demonic sort of winter festival vibe to it. So we named it Diablo Robotico after the robot devil in Futurama, and just thought we'd have a bit of fun with that too. That's it's a very strong spirit. It's probably the strongest. Well, it's definitely the strongest we've released. Even after the 60% Drone Riot, we weren't sure we were going to go much above that, but that was the first single cask release we've got, and these guys will be getting it soon, so you'll be able to get it through the whiskey company too. So
awesome, that'd be fantastic. What was that just dropped in? It does sound interesting. Agreed, Paul. Does anyone else have any questions about any of the 6 that we've tried today, or rums in general, New Norfolk Distillery in general that we haven't covered? Anyone curious about anything? While you're thinking, I will let everyone know that there is a code that you can get tonight that you can use at our checkout for 10% off any of the New Norfolk products. So I'm about to post that in the chat here, which I will do presently. And also when I send out the when Craig sends out the recording of this to everyone, that code will be reissued there as well. But basically, New Norfolk 10 until the end of Sunday, you'll be able to get 10% off any of these products, plus the other two liqueurs, which are the Lamington liqueur and help me out, Taryn.
Coffee, the Martian Sky coffee liqueur.
The coffee liqueur, thank you. So yeah, Martian Sky coffee liqueur and Moss Australis, again a Star Wars reference on the Lamington liqueur. So plus these great six that are already here. So any of those that you'd like to try and grab a bottle for yourself or a friend, or Father's Day is coming up and a great option for that. You can get 10% off for the remainder of this week right through till Sunday night. And of course, at the conclusion of this tasting, all of you who are still here, which is, I don't think we've lost a single person who was here at the start, so that's fantastic. We're going to do our door prize effectively, and one of you guys is going to be going home. There's a thumbs up coming in from Lauren. Someone's going to be winning a bottle of New Horizon as well, which is absolutely sensational. There's a comment from David that just popped in. Although you've styled your rum on Caribbean rums, are there any other rums in Australia close to your style? Good question.
So we're in a unique position where we make, between our silver spirits and all the rums you've tried tonight. Let me start again. All the rums you guys have tried tonight, between the silver spirit, the Misty Valley silver spirit, the Drone Riot wild fermented silver spirit, the Dormant Star and spiced rum, they're basically like four different, like quite different styles of rum, which would be from four different locations in the Caribbean. So our Misty Valley is more along the lines of like a lighter spirit you probably get from Barbados or Eastern Caribbean there. When our wild ferment is more along the lines of the Ray and Nephew overproof white rums you get from Jamaica. So there's like two different styles already. And then the Dormant Star is along the lines of the sort of traditional British naval style sort of rum as well. But we're producing all of these. The spiced rum is just our interpretation of what a Caribbean style spiced rum is, but there are spiced rums made in obviously South America, like a whole bunch of different places as well. And they're the styles we've chosen. We are planning on aging longer than 2 years, but basically we're just seeing what comes out of barrel. And we're not going to release anything from barrel that we don't think is any good. Like we do a weekly tasting panel, and everyone does that in our business, whether they are rum drinkers, distillers, whether they're salespeople, or even my parents who are here, they'll jump in on it too. So going back to that, there are a few small batch rum distilleries around though. So for our wild ferment, there's another distillery in Melbourne and eastern Victoria called Killick, and there's a couple of other small batch distilleries in and around Sydney, Melbourne, and up in Queensland, which is obviously a big part of rum country up there. So in Australia, you can't talk about rum without talking about the giant polar bear in the room, which is Bundaberg. And the rum that they make is obviously marketed in a certain way, but they're on a much larger scale than a lot of the smaller guys who are now producing rum in Australia is. So there's a lot of variation with rum, and Australia does have a deep history with rum. In Tasmania, the distilling industry is only 30 years old as a result of Bill Lark going about changing the laws down here so that small distilleries could start up, and my distillery wouldn't be here without that. And prior to that, it was Lady Jane Franklin, whose husband was Governor Franklin down here in Tasmania, who outlawed spirits production, who said that they'd rather the barley be fed to pigs than be used to turn men into swine. And that's when spirits production stopped in Tasmania. But luckily, 30 years ago, that was all changed. And as a result of that, I'm now making what I love, which is rum in Tasmania. So pretty happy about that.
Just a question that's come in. Rob, first of all, says he doesn't care where it comes from as long as it's in his glass, and follows up with, how much difference do you expect from longer time in the barrel, hypothetically? Like, will there be more caramel notes, for example?
So barrels, the way barrel aging is, I don't know, some people might say it's an exact science or the like, but once you have a lot of barrels, you can start blending to get your regular flavors. But for us, for our blended rum, which is basically maybe 2 or 3 barrels, which is our Dormant Star, we don't have the vast array of barrels and flavors to source different rums from. So after a few years, we are putting more barrels down and more barrels down. We just on Friday last week, we put down our 99th barrel. So 99 barrels of rum on the walls where we were putting it down.
Next one's a big one.
Yeah. So we're getting up to 3 digits this week. But with the way barrels work is a barrel can taste great, and then leaving it in the barrel for another month or 2, it may then add too much tannin or too much oak, and then the barrel flavor might just be out of whack again. Because it's like a graph which just sort of has to intersect. So you want it at the point where you got the right amount of tannins, you got the right amount of flavor, and then that's when you want to start using that barrel. But if you miss that, because we have to age it 2 years, we might get to that after a year and a half. We might get to after a year and a half, the barrel being like perfect, but because it's still not rum yet, yeah, it is an equation from hell. We still got to wait till the 2-year mark, so we might miss that. So might meet up at that perfect point again at 3.5 years, or 4 years, for example. And as barrels do mature more, we are getting more depth in flavour and more uniqueness of what the barrel can impart upon it. But just because a spirit isn't like 15 or 20 years old doesn't mean it's not a great spirit already. So yeah.
Just to follow on from that, Craig, and he might have missed the answer earlier, but the barrels are toasted and charred. What would heavily charred barrels produce?
Heavily charred barrels, they should filter it a lot, but for ex-bourbon barrels that impart, you basically be toasting. I guess you get a lot more caramel out of the barrel. That's my opinion. I'm not 100% sure because we've never gone that extreme, but having a lot more of the charcoal on the inside would clean the spirit up maybe at a quicker rate as well, because the way the charcoal, the toasting and the charring of the barrel works is that the charring on the inside of the barrel acts in the same way a charcoal filter would work on your water system. It cleans up the water, it makes it, it filters out some impurities and all that sort of stuff too. So it will clean up the spirit maybe just a bit more, but might be adding maybe a bit more of that oakiness, might be activating other tannins and other oaks in the barrel, which you may not necessarily want, which you may want. Like it's just down to preference and whatever the distillery is doing.
Sure. David also said that I missed this before, that he says the Beanley rum is close to him, but doesn't buy the beer anymore. So hopefully new Norfolk rum can also be something that's close to him as well. Yeah. And Lauren also said that there's been an incredible night, and since my favourite comment, has inspired her to go up and spend big to become pirates. And I think that we can all take a leaf out of that book. Nothing wrong with being rum-swilling pirates. And thank you for sharing your incredible rum knowledge and posting. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So I think it's about time to work out who's who's getting sent a bottle of the Near Horizon Spiced Rum. So I am going to do a Google number generator, and 13 people. All right, hopefully hang on, that background thing's playing. I'm going to turn that off so you guys can see. How do I get that stupid thing off? All right, so can you guys see that is number 6 from a Google number generator. Hopefully no one thinks I'm playing funny buggers. So number 6, skipping Tarrant and myself, is Rob. You are tonight's lucky winner. So I will contact you. Well done, and we will get a bottle on its way to you no matter what. So congratulations for that. Hope that you enjoy the spiced rum, because that's what's coming for you. 2 thumbs up. Yeah, no, that's what we like. So awesome. And for everyone else, as I said, that new Norfolk 10, the code that I put in before, I'll put it down there now again. Up until midnight on Sunday, if you guys want to get yourselves, some friends, your dad for Father's Day, some rum or liqueur or silver spirit, no better time than the present. And in general, thank you to Tarrant for his time tonight and for being so informative and really taking us on a bit through his personal journey on this whole rum crafting experience. And I know that I'm a massive fan and convert to New Norfolk since coming across your path. And yeah, thank you very much. Was there anything else you wanted to say, Tarrant?
No, just thanks for listening, thanks for trying, and thanks for coming along. And if you do actually want to come and visit us in Tasmania, you're always more than welcome. So thank you very much.
Definitely in my future somewhere. That would be great. Maybe tying in with the Dark Mofo Festival might be a great double.
There's plenty of stuff going on down here. There's the Taste of Tasmania, or the Taste of Summer now they're calling it, at the end of the year, around New Year's Eve. And like I said, there's Dark Mofo and a whole bunch of other festivals on throughout the year as well. So come on down whenever you like. And like I said, we're always here. So
awesome. Well, with that, I'm going to stop the recording. For those of you who have been watching this on the recording at a later date, thank you for coming back and finding this on YouTube. I hope that you've enjoyed it. You can find plenty of the other previous tastings that we've done that you might find interesting. Some of them still have packs available, so just search tastings on the website and you'll see what's still there that you may want to do retrospectively like you're doing this. And for everyone here live in the room, have a fantastic rest of your week. Stay safe, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.